The giant I just cut down with everything I had wasn't even the boss. Somewhere in the dark ahead, the real king of giants was still waiting, strong enough to make even me stop and think. But there's an old law that even monsters can't lie under. And tonight, I was going to make it answer one question: whose side are you really on? AI Anime and Manga presents Solo Leveling. If you're following the Shadow Monarch's rise, a like genuinely helps the channel. And tell me in the comments who you want Jinwoo to add to his army next. Subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and channel members get every chapter early. Wait a minute. I hurriedly brought the notification window up again. I had no time to celebrate the quadruple level-ups as I zeroed in on the first message. I was stunned. You have defeated an enemy. That wasn't the boss? My surprised stare shifted to the giant with dull, lifeless eyes. Its strength and imposing aura had been completely different from the other giants and had shocked even me. There was no way it hadn't been the boss of the dungeon, but here the system was, claiming it was a regular old magic beast.
Boos!
Jinwoo excitedly called out as he ran toward me, but I urgently signaled for him to freeze. Whether he was listening to me or something had spooked him, Jinwoo froze in his tracks. My expression turned grave. I hadn't received the customary notification that I'd defeated the master of the dungeon, which meant the raid wasn't over. And that wasn't the only weird thing. There was no sign of the black smoke coming from the giant's corpse that indicated shadow extraction was possible. Right on cue, I heard a chime. Ping, you cannot extract a shadow. What's going on? As I pondered the many unexpected turns of events, I heard the sound of cracking bones. The giant's jaw was moving, its mouth opened, and I caught a glimpse of a humanoid figure. I immediately dropped into a battle stance, light glinting off the sharp blades of the two daggers I'd summoned. However, the voice that emerged from the giant's mouth sounded familiar.
My king, it is but your simple servant.
Baru emerged, as courteous to me as ever. Oh, it was just you. I relaxed. Baru's presence had been indistinguishable from the giants, masked by the magic beast's tremendous levels of mana. I sent the daggers back to inventory after confirming Baru's identity. The Ant King was drenched in the giant's guts and blood. It was clear how much effort he'd exerted hacking away at the giant's innards. I smiled and opened my mouth to praise Baru, but paused and wrinkled my nose. What the heck is that smell? The disgusting stench grew worse as Baru drew closer. Baru was also able to smell the fluids and wore the same expression of disgust. The ant stopped right in front of me and bowed. Okay then. I was about to pat Baru on the shoulder for a job well done, but changed my mind upon spotting an unidentified yellow liquid. Good job, Baru.
Thank you, my liege.
Baru sounded uncharacteristically curtaining. In any case, this was not the time to be concerned about the yellow mystery goo. If this behemoth wasn't the master of the dungeon, then where would I find it? The air around us started to subtly vibrate. My defenses were up again. A split second later, Baru sensed it too, and immediately moved to shield me.
Skra!
A sudden gale storm hit us. I gritted my teeth. Wind forceful enough to uproot trees blew through us in a blink of an eye, then calmed. Thinking the danger had passed, Baru moved from his spot in front of me. I scanned my surroundings, then gasped as I realized what had happened. No way. That was no whirlwind. It was the giant releasing its copious stores of mana. The resulting blast had swept away everything in our vicinity. What happened to Jinwoo? I spun around to where Jinwoo had been standing, and was relieved to find him safe in Igris's arms. Whew. I inspected the direction in which the magic power had headed. Every iota of mana formerly housed within the dead giant had been sucked into the gate, as if the gate had swallowed it up. The black membrane that used to seal off the gate had been shattered long ago during the dungeon break, so we could clearly see the world inside. The vibrations in the air let out a low hum. Despite the countless things I had experienced, I had never seen anything like this before. There's something in there. My perception stat was picking up something. I peered into the depths. Whatever was in there made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I simultaneously felt goosebumps forming and chills up my spine. Ba-dump, ba-dump, ba-dump. My heartbeat accelerated, as if resonating with the vibrations.
Boss.
Step by cautious step, Jinwoo approached me and peered at the gate. Given the danger, I looked at Jinho and emphasized, "Wait here for me."
Yes, boss.
Jinho obediently nodded. As much as he wanted to tag along, he had a feeling he would only be a burden satisfied with Jinho's answer. I stepped through the gate with my shadow soldiers. Whoa, this is... High-rank dungeons tended to be large, but none had ever come close to this. This is huge. I was convinced that the word huge existed purely to describe this place. I had to swallow my gasp as I walked through the endlessly high and wide passage. I proceeded without making a single noise. This had been my modus operandi ever since I had been a low-rank hunter, incapable of doing much to guard myself against magic beasts. But the habit persisted even after I distinguished myself as an S-rank hunter. An abundance of caution was never a bad thing. My eyes glittered in the dark. I kept my guard up as I advanced farther into the dungeon. My soldiers, having fully recovered from the fierce battle, quietly followed. How long had we been walking? I stopped, and Baru, who was right behind me, gestured to the rest of the army. As a creature made to live in colonies, Baru was good at commanding large groups. The entire shadow army came to a halt. Baru leaned in to say something.
My king.
Shh! I held up my index finger. Do you hear that? Baru focused his ears and then nodded.
I do.
Baru could hear it too. Laughter, faint enough that only someone of Baru's caliber could perceive it, came from the end of the dungeon where the boss was supposed to be. The masculine-sounding laugh continued in the distance, as if whoever it was sincerely happy about something. I was puzzled. Despite the darkness, the opponent should have detected my approach, as well as the numbers of the shadow army at this distance. Yet it's laughing it up. Of course. I also measured up my opponent. The ominous energy making it harder to breathe was even stronger than that of the boss giant. However, I was no slouch myself. I unleashed my full mana.
Whoa!
Waves of magic rippled around me, emanating incredible power strong enough to eliminate the shadow soldiers in my vicinity if I'd so elected. Haha. The opponent continued to laugh. I found myself grinning as well. What an intriguing fellow. I kept smiling as I entered the boss's lair, the wide-open space where the enormous giant had been housed. I headed toward the source of the laughter without hesitation. The shadow soldiers marched behind me. Stomp, stomp, stomp. The army of minions cloaked in black smoke and moving in perfect order should have been enough to intimidate the enemy. However, ha 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 ha, that wasn't the case for the man draped in chains from the neck down. He wasn't just bound by the black chains tethered to the wall of the dungeon. Some of them pierced the man's body. One had to wonder what heinous crime this wretched soul had committed to be punished so horribly. I frowned, but the fellow beamed at me as if greeting a dear friend. It's completely, utterly ridiculous. All of you detestable rulers, feast your eyes on the one who found me first. I stopped at a distance as the prisoner continued his rant. The chains. Please unlock these chains. I know the ruler's plan. We must quickly inform the other monarchs. The man suddenly stopped, and the joy in his eyes faded. For a beat, neither of us spoke. The man and I carefully scrutinized each other. It was then that I realized his face was the same as that of the last humongous giant. He isn't human. The man's magic energy felt different from a human's. He also fluently spoke the language of magic beasts. But why was a magic beast chained up inside the dungeon? Many types of bosses had been found in gates over the last 10 years, but never one imprisoned like this. At least the mysterious man had given me a potential hint with the word rulers. Silence stretched between us. There was a short pause before the prisoner spoke again. You're not the one I know. I didn't know who I'd been mistaken for, but I wasn't going to deny anything. I had never seen this guy's face before today either. Did the rulers or whoever do this to you? I asked. The prisoner answered, I am being used as the foundation stone for the real war. This was a first for me. I had repeatedly tried to probe intelligent magic beasts, but none had been able to explain their origins. However, the magic beast now before me had revealed the purpose of his existence. He was the cornerstone upon which the real war was going to be built. Whether he was telling the truth or not, this could serve as a clue. Who are these rulers? The prisoner answered, the longtime enemies of the monarchs. Monarchs? I remembered something the angel statue had mentioned when cornered, something about the other monarchs not sitting by and letting things happen. Wherever the other monarchs were, I had a feeling one was currently in front of me. So those rulers chained you up like this because... Yes, the man replied sorrowfully. I am one of the monarchs, he continued desperately. It's likely both the monarchs and rulers are after you. You don't have enough power to deal with both sides as you are. You'll need more influence. I had a hard time keeping up with him, but one word caught my attention. Influence? The man nodded. Release me, and I shall help you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Who was helping whom now? A magic beast wanted to help a human? I was so taken aback I couldn't stop myself from asking, why should I believe you? The man was resolute. I will make you believe me. He chanted a spell, his lips moving like a recording sped up 100 times. As he did, the dormant magic power within the lair began swirling around him, and I instantly summoned my daggers in reply. Had there been any hostility behind the magic, I would have stuck a dagger straight in the man's forehead, but I remained patient. The amount of mana the prisoner was manipulating was extremely small compared to what either he or I wielded, and I sensed no hostility. I waited, prepared to use dagger barrage if necessary. The tension in the air pricked my skin like a needle. Finally, the man finished chanting in the strange language, and a chime signaled an incoming notification. Regia, the king of giants and monarch of the beginning, has activated the Oath of Sincerity, negotiation. Once the Oath of Sincerity, negotiation is accepted, both the caster and the recipient cannot lie. Would you like to accept the Oath of Sincerity, negotiation? My eyes were drawn to the man's title, the King of Giants. I recalled all the giants I had felled. That also explained why the one guarding the gate had worn the same face. The man wordlessly awaited my decision. What should I do? I stared at the blinking yes and no buttons as I debated. Considering I had received a message from the system about it, this would affect me for sure. But it was clear which of us would be at a greater disadvantage. It's definitely his loss. I had the upper hand. As cold-hearted as it sounded, I could always just kill the guy if he asked a question I couldn't answer. Besides, it was his idea to begin with, and I wasn't a newbie who would feel guilty killing a magic beast. Yes, Ping. The system signaled with another chime that the deal was done. The Oath of Sincerity, negotiation, has been activated. The caster and the recipient cannot lie to each other until both parties mutually agree to cancel the oath. As soon as I accepted, the King of Giants reiterated what he had said earlier. Release me, and I shall help you. I was bewildered. It was as if my throat had been sealed. The King of Giants burst into laughter. Yes, that is the Oath of Sincerity. I said nothing. I really had been affected. I had been testing it by trying to say, I trust you completely. I'll unchain you right away. The Oath of Sincerity, huh? My heart raced after experiencing it firsthand. I couldn't trust the monarch completely yet, since there was still the method of withholding information. Rather, I was more cautious than before the oath had been struck. Why can you talk freely but not other magic beasts? The king echoed. Magic beasts? Creatures that emerge from gates. Oh, you mean denizens of chaos? The King of Giants laughed derisively. Let me ask you in return, why do you think the denizens of chaos and the monarchs who rule them are one and the same? He wore a solemn expression befitting a king. The denizens of chaos exiting from these gates are all defeated troops. They were captured by the armies of the rulers and broken after living in captivity for an eternity. But I am a king. I am different from them. I have been patiently waiting to escape the ruler's grasp. The king laughed wistfully. And so here we are. I fell silent and tried to take in the information as objectively as possible. If he truly is on a different tier from other magic beasts, I might finally get some answers for once. I swallowed hard at the thought. There were so many questions I wanted to ask, but first, there was one thing I needed to confirm. By any chance, the ruler's armies, do they have wings and wear silver armor? The king answered, Indeed, those are the ruler's soldiers. It was as I suspected. I felt like a puzzle piece had been slotted into the right spot. I began to suspect that the footage the angel statue had shown me was an actual memory and not something manufactured. What in the world was going on? I asked, why do these rulers keep sending creatures to us? In other words, I wanted to know why gates existed. With that knowledge, I might be able to keep them from spawning to begin with, so that was my biggest concern. I've already told you, haven't I? The monarch declared. They are preparing for a war. A war? They're trying to transform this world into a battlefield and challenge the monarchs once more. I don't understand. What does that have to do with sending monsters to Earth? True, it did turn the world into something far worse than a war zone. I recalled the gruesome incident at Jinnah's school, but that involved humans, not non-human entities. The King of Giants said, Why, it's to bring mana into your world. I felt like someone had smacked me on the back of the head. Everybody, both hunters and civilians alike, believed that if magic beasts were curses from the gates, then magic powers were blessings. Magic and essence stones had become excellent sources of energy, so to hear it was actually a precursor to a war? The King of Giants continued. The rulers determined that the best way to bring mana into a world in which it hadn't existed before would be to spill the blood of those who had it. What better way than to sacrifice their captives? Needless to say, the world had become denser and denser with mana over the years. This was not a natural phenomenon, but, rather, the fruit hanging from the trees planted in the soil watered with the blood of magic beasts. The King of Giants went on. Mana makes the world stronger. The ruler's plan was to fortify your world in order to stop it from getting destroyed. And this so-called war, the king answered, a rematch between the monarchs and the rulers that will turn the world you know into a living hell. A battle between the rulers' armies and the creatures that magic beasts used to be, just as I had witnessed in the memory. If the king was to be believed, then it really would be hell on earth. The king's face darkened. There isn't much time. I frowned. The king said, once it is discovered that the one who found me is you, both the monarchs and the rulers will mobilize. It's possible their envoys are already on the move. You keep making it sound like they're after me. Why is that? You really don't know anything. The king sounded like he pitied me. The power you possess isn't actually yours. I nodded in agreement. The abilities of the Shadow Monarch had been given to me by the system, so I had no grounds to protest that. The King of Giants continued. But the fact you now wield it is evidence that the original owner betrayed the other monarchs. That tracked with what the angel statue had said. It had most likely been a denizen of chaos that served the monarch's est. As I ran through more questions in my head, the King of Giants spoke up. You've become the enemy of both the monarchs and the rulers, but I alone swear that I will stand by your side and fight for you. So will you help me? The King of Giants was convinced that would be enough to persuade me. However, I had another suggestion. If that's the case, it would be better if you were one of my shadow soldiers. The King of Giants shuddered, caught off guard. For a split second, he seemed to see the Shadow Monarch in me. He wasn't wrong. It would be better for me to have a loyal subordinate instead of a stranger for an ally. The king seemed impressed that I had thought of that. The king answered, the monarchs and rulers have astral bodies. Once an astral body dies, it vanishes and cannot be made into a shadow. So I cannot become one of your soldiers. I nodded. I see. I understood why the king hadn't even considered the possibility of being turned into a shadow soldier. The oath of sincerity guaranteed he was speaking the truth. After some thought, I finally looked up. Do you feel you have enough reason to help me? Asked the king. I stared at him. The King of Giants appeared confident he would be released from his chains. I wasn't someone who wanted to see others suffer, nor did I have a reason to decline his offer to be an ally. However, why did I feel so uneasy? I'm missing something. I had to figure it out. I broke into a cold sweat. The king pleaded with me once again. Please unchain me. I let out a deep sigh. No matter how much I debated, I couldn't think of a single reason to refuse the king's favor. Maybe I was overthinking things. Am I being paranoid? I approached the captive king with a demon monarch's dagger in hand. We exchanged nods, and with one strike, the mana-infused dagger effortlessly severed one of the chains. Ba-dump, ba-dump. My heart was having a fit. I had already made up my mind, so why the apprehension? Clank. I cut a second chain. The King of Giants remained stoic as his shackles fell one by one. The third chain. Clunk. I leaned in to cut the chain rooted in the king's back. Ba-dump. My heart sank. But why? What had I missed? Thoughts raced through my mind like a raging river crashing onto rocks. I stopped working on the chains and looked at the king. You said you'd be on my side, right? The King of Giants answered. Of course. If you help me, I'll help you. This is a legal and binding agreement between monarchs. I had heard this response several times already, but there was one other thing I wanted to confirm. In that case, are you on the side of humans? The king was silent. The oath of sincerity prevented the King of Giants from responding. I looked at the back of the king's neck, and the black essence stone stuck there, cold and shiny. For as long as the essence stone was a part of him, the king would have to obey the rulers just like any other magic beasts, including their order to kill humans. Murderous intent flowed from the king as he aimed for my temple with his freed right hand, but the chains kept me just out of reach. I ducked and plunged my dagger into the king's chest. Shunk! Despite being draped in chains, my dagger went in deep. Gah! The King of Giants coughed out blood. But that wouldn't be good enough. It was too dangerous to let him live. This magic beast might become another curse to the planet. With that final decision, I repeatedly stabbed the king in the chest while avoiding his attacks. Shunk, 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 shunk. The king finally stopped moving after the sixth strike. It was over. I retrieved my dagger. The king of giants looked me straight in the eyes and smiled. It's too bad, but it seems this is the end. I said nothing. I took a step back and shook the blood from my dagger. The king continued. As the conflict between the citizens of your world and the denizens of chaos grows more intense, it will become more and more of a battlefield. The king coughed up blood again and smiled one last time. May all that you wish to protect burn to ashes. That won't happen. I cut off the king's sentence as well as his head. Shh. You have defeated the master of the dungeon. With his last breath, the king of giants released a tidal wave of magic power out into the human realm. The transformation of the world had begun.